The auction hall reeked of desperation and expensive cologne, a nauseating combination that churned Moon Whisper's stomach as she stood on the raised platform with 20 other Omegas. All of them wore the same thin white shifts that left little to the imagination. Numbers were pinned to their clothing like livestock at a county fair. And all of them understood that their lives were about to change. Some in uncomfortable ways, others in utterly horrifying ways. Arya was number 17. The number felt significant, though she couldn't say why. Perhaps because 17 was the age she had been when her father's gambling debts had spiraled so far out of control that he had been forced to make the ultimate sacrifice, selling his Omega daughter to the highest bidder in the illegal underground markets lurking in the shadows of civilized wolf society. Lot number 17. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the crowded hall, making Arya flinch despite her best efforts to remain composed. 22 years old, unmated, verified, fertile, bloodline traces back to the old Silverwood pack before its dissolution. Starting bid, 50,000. The amount was staggering, more money than most wolves would see in a lifetime of honest work. But for the wealthy alphas gathered in this secret location, 50,000 was pocket change, the cost of a new car or a weekend getaway, not a living, breathing person with hopes, dreams, and a soul screaming in protest at being reduced to merchandise. 55,000, a voice called from the back. 60,000, another countered immediately. Arya kept her eyes fixed on the floor as the bidding continued, trying to make herself small and unremarkable. She had heard the stories of Omegas who drew too much attention at these auctions, those who were beautiful, defiant, or spirited. They ended up with the cruelest buyers, alphas who relished breaking their possessions as much as using them. Better to be invisible, forgettable, to go to someone who might at least treat her like a servant rather than a toy to be destroyed. 200,000. The new voice cut through the rising bids like a knife, deep, commanding, carrying an authority that made the entire hall fall silent. Arya's head snapped up despite herself, her eyes searching for the source of that incredible voice. At the back of the auction hall, partially hidden in shadows, stood a figure that radiated power, making her Omega instincts snap to attention. Even from a distance, without a clear view of his face, she could feel the weight of his alpha presence pressing down like a tangible force. That's Alpha King Kale Stormborn," someone whispered nearby, the words carrying in the sudden hush that had fallen over the crowd. "What's he doing here?" The auctioneer went pale, clearly recognizing that the most powerful wolf in existence had just entered his illegal operation. "Your Majesty, we weren't expecting," he stammered. 200,000? Kyle repeated, stepping forward into the light where Arya could finally see him. He was tall, powerfully built, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to glow with inner fire. But it wasn't just his appearance. His absolute confidence and commanding authority made her breath catch in her throat. "For Lot 17, do I have any competing bids?" His question cut through the hall. Silence answered him. No one was foolish enough to bid against the Alpha King, especially not while he looked over the crowd with an expression that promised severe consequences for anyone who tried. "Sold," the auctioneer finally managed, his voice trembling with barely concealed terror. "To His Majesty, for 200,000. As guards moved forward to escort Arya off the platform, she couldn't tear her eyes away from the Alpha King. He watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle, his golden eyes tracking her every movement as if she were the most fascinating thing he had ever seen. This wasn't how these transactions usually went. Buyers typically paid and left, sending servants to collect their purchases later. But Kyle stayed exactly where he was, waiting as she was brought down from the platform and made to stand before him. "Your Majesty," the auctioneer began, pulling out papers for the official transfer of ownership. If you'll just sign here, she becomes your legal property under. The single word carried such absolute authority that everyone nearby instinctively stepped back. Kyle's gaze never left Arya as he spoke. I will not be signing any ownership papers. I will transfer the agreed payment and this young woman will leave with me. But she will not be my property. She will not be anyone's property. Confusion rippled through the crowd. If he wasn't claiming ownership, what was the point of bidding? The auctioneer opened his mouth to question this, then seemed to think better of it and simply nodded. As you wish, Your Majesty. I'll have the funds transferred to your account immediately. Within minutes, the transaction was complete, and Arya found herself being escorted from the auction hall by royal guards. She walked in a daze, unable to process what had just happened. The Alpha King had purchased her for an astronomical sum, only to immediately declare she wasn't his property. A sleek black vehicle waited outside, and one of the guards opened the door for her with surprising courtesy. The Alpha King climbed in beside her, and soon they were pulling away from the warehouse district where the auction had been held. For several minutes, they rode in silence. Arya kept her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on them, too overwhelmed to know what to say or do. Everything she had been taught about how to behave around the Alpha who purchased you suddenly seemed irrelevant, given his declaration that she wasn't his property. What's your name? His voice was gentler than in the auction hall, though it still carried that underlying command that made her Omega instincts urge her to respond immediately. Arya, Your Majesty. Arya, Moon Whisper. Arya, he repeated thoughtfully, as if savoring the sound. That's a beautiful name. Tell me, Arya, how did you end up in that auction hall? The question was kind, yet shame burned hot in her chest. My father had debts. Gambling debts he couldn't repay. The collectors gave him a choice, his life or his Omega daughter. He chose to keep living. She heard Kyle's sharp intake of breath, felt the anger radiating from him at her words. Your own father sold you to save himself from his mistakes. Yes, Your Majesty. That's right. He seemed to be searching for words strong enough to express his disgust. That's unconscionable. No parent should ever sacrifice their child like that, regardless of the circumstances. It's the way of things for Omegas like me, Arya said quietly, voicing a truth she had learned early. We're valued only for what we can provide to others. Our own wants and needs don't factor into the equation. That's going to change. The conviction in his voice made her finally look up at him, meeting those intense golden eyes. I meant what I said back there, Arya. You don't belong to me. You don't belong to anyone. You're a free wolf, with all the rights and protections that come with that status. The words should have filled her with joy and relief. Instead, they sparked a strange anxiety in her chest. I don't understand, Your Majesty. Why would you spend 200,000 to buy me just to set me free? Because those auctions are an abomination that shouldn't exist in any civilized society, he replied, his voice hardening with anger. I've been working with my intelligence network for years to track down and shut down illegal Omega trafficking rings. When I received word about tonight's auction, I came personally to ensure it would be the last one that location ever hosted. As if to punctuate his words, Arya heard sirens in the distance, growing closer to the warehouse they had just left. Royal enforcers, she realized, moving in to arrest everyone involved in the operation. So buying me was just part of shutting down the auction? She asked, trying to understand her place in all of this. Not just that, he admitted. When I saw you standing on that platform, so small and frightened, yet trying so hard to be brave, something in me reacted. My wolf insisted that I get you out of there, that I make sure you were safe and protected. The admission made her heart race with an emotion she was afraid to name. What happens to me now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That's entirely up to you. They were passing through the gates of what had to be the royal palace now, its impressive towers and walls illuminated by strategically placed lights. You'll stay here tonight, in the guest quarters. Tomorrow, my staff will provide you with funds, identification papers, and transportation to anywhere you want to go. You'll be free to start whatever life you choose. The offer was more generous than anything she could have imagined, yet as they exited the vehicle and she followed him into the palace, Arya felt a strange hollowness. She had spent weeks preparing herself mentally for a life of servitude, for being owned and used, having no control over her destiny. The sudden freedom being offered felt almost more terrifying than captivity would have been. What did she even want? She had spent so long merely surviving that she had never allowed herself to consider what she might desire if given the choice. The guest quarters are this way, Kyle said, leading her through corridors decorated with tasteful elegance that made her painfully aware of her auction house shift and bare feet. You'll find clothing in the wardrobe, and my staff has been instructed to provide anything you need. Are you hungry? I can have food sent up. Arya hesitated, overwhelmed by the kindness in his voice. After weeks of being treated like merchandise, of having no one care about her comfort or well-being, his consideration made tears prick at her eyes. I don't know what I need, Your Majesty. I'm sorry. I know that's not helpful. He stopped walking and turned to face her fully, his expression softening with understanding. You've been through trauma, Arya. It's okay not to know what you need right now. How about this? I'll have a tray of various foods sent up along with some tea. You can eat what appeals to you and ignore the rest. Does that sound manageable? She nodded, not trusting her voice. They reached a set of ornate double doors, which he pushed open to reveal a suite larger and more luxurious than any space she had ever occupied. These are your rooms for tonight, he explained. The bathroom is through that door, and you'll find everything you need for a bath or shower. I'll be in my study if you need anything. Just tell any staff member and they'll find me immediately. He turned to leave, and Arya felt panic surge through her chest. Your Majesty, wait. Kyle paused in the doorway, looking back at her with patient curiosity. Yes? I've never been completely alone before. At home, I shared a room with my sisters. At the holding facility before the auction, we were kept in cells with multiple omegas. She hesitated, embarrassed by her own weakness. The thought of being by myself in this big space. Would you like company? He asked gently. I can have one of the female staff members stay with you, or... The words escaped before she could stop them, and she immediately wished she hadn't spoken. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. You're the Alpha King. You have important things to do. I shouldn't have... I'll stay, he interrupted, his voice warm, carrying a note that might have been pleasure. If that's what you need, Arya, then I'm happy to provide it. He stepped back into the room and closed the door behind him, then gestured to the comfortable sitting area near the windows. Why don't we sit? You can tell me about yourself while we wait for the food to arrive. As they settled into the plush chairs, Arya found herself studying him more openly than she had dared before. Up close, the Alpha King was even more striking than she had first realized. His features were strong and aristocratic, yet there was a kindness in his eyes that contradicted the stern reputation he carried. What do you want to know? She asked quietly. Everything, he replied simply. What you liked to do before your father's betrayal? What dreams you had for your future? What makes you happy, or sad, or angry? I want to know who Arya Moonwhisper really is beneath the trauma and fear. No one had ever asked her such questions before. No one had ever cared about her inner life or her thoughts beyond how they affected her usefulness. The genuine interest in Kale's expression made something crack open in her chest, and before she knew it, words were spilling out. She told him about growing up in a household where she was valued only for her Omega status, about the dreams she had harbored of becoming a teacher or healer before those possibilities were stolen from her. She spoke of her love for reading and music, her fear of thunderstorms, and her complicated feelings toward the sisters who had stood by silently while their father sold her. Kale listened to it all with focused attention, asking thoughtful questions and responding with understanding rather than judgment. When the food arrived, he encouraged her to eat while they talked, and Arya found herself relaxing in his presence in ways she never could have imagined. "What about you?" she asked finally, emboldened by the easy companionship that had settled between them. "What's it like being the Alpha King? It must be lonely, being the most powerful wolf in existence, with no one who can truly understand what that's like." Something flickered across his face. Surprise at being understood, and perhaps relief at being seen. "It is lonely," he admitted. "I've ruled for over 2 centuries, and in all that time I've never found anyone I could truly be myself with. Everyone wants something from me: political favor, protection, resources, power. No one just wants me." The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache with empathy. "That sounds exhausting." "It is." He leaned back in his chair, some of the formal posture slipping away to reveal the tired man beneath the crown. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I had been born as anyone else. If I could have pursued my own interests, formed connections based on genuine compatibility rather than political necessity, maybe even found a mate who loved me for who I am, not what I represent." "You've never found your true mate?" The question was deeply personal. Too personal, maybe, but Arya genuinely wanted to know. "No. I've looked, hoping that somewhere out there was the other half of my soul. But 200 years of searching has yielded nothing." He paused, his golden eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Until tonight. I had started to believe the moon goddess had decided I wasn't meant to have that kind of happiness." The implication in his words made Arya's pulse quicken. "What changed tonight?" "You did." The admission was soft but certain. "From the moment I saw you on that platform, looking so brave despite your fear, something in me recognized you. My wolf went wild, demanding that I claim you, protect you, never let you out of my sight. I've never experienced anything like it." Arya's mouth went dry as understanding washed over her. "The mate bond?" "I think so," he said quietly. "Though I didn't want to say anything because you've been through so much trauma. The last thing you need is pressure from an alpha claiming rights over you based on supernatural connections." He ran a hand through his hair, looking almost nervous for the first time since she'd met him. "That's why I insisted you don't belong to anyone. You need to be free to make your own choices, even if those choices mean walking away from me." The nobility of his stance, the way he was willing to let her go even after recognizing her as his mate, made emotions swell in Arya's chest. "What if I don't want to walk away?" Hope flared in his eyes before he carefully schooled his expression back to neutrality. "Arya, you can't make that decision right now. You're vulnerable, traumatized, probably feeling gratitude toward me for getting you out of that auction. Those aren't the right foundations for accepting a mate bond." "You're right," she acknowledged, appreciating his caution, even as her Omega instincts screamed at her to close the distance between them. "But can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Will you tell me about the life you would have chosen? If you hadn't been born to be Alpha King, what would you have wanted?" The question seemed to surprise him, but after a moment of thought, he began to speak. He told her about a small cabin in the mountains where he sometimes retreated when royal duties became overwhelming. About his love for astronomy and the nights he spent studying the stars. About his secret dream of writing books under a pseudonym, contributing something to the world that had nothing to do with his rank or power. As he spoke, Arya found herself falling a little in love with the man behind the crown. This wasn't the terrifying Alpha King of legend, but a person who felt, dreamed, and yearned for simple happiness just like anyone else. Hours passed as they talked, the conversation flowing naturally, easily. Arya shared more about her own interrupted dreams, and Kale listened with the same focused attention he had shown earlier, making her feel valued and important in ways she had never experienced. "I should let you get some rest," Kyle said finally, noticing the exhaustion beginning to show on her face. "Will you stay?" The request slipped out before she could think better of it. Not in a, "I don't mean anything inappropriate, but could you just stay in the room? Even if you're reading or working. Just not alone, please." The vulnerability in her voice seemed to affect him deeply. "Of course. I'll sleep on the couch if that makes you comfortable." "Thank you." She rose on shaking legs and made her way to the bedroom area, where soft night clothes were laid out on the massive bed. After changing quickly, she climbed under the covers and tried to settle her racing thoughts. Through the open doorway, she could see Kale settling onto the couch with a book, his presence a solid comfort in the unfamiliar space. Knowing he was there, knowing she wasn't alone, made it possible for her to finally relax. But as she drifted towards sleep, a strange sensation began to build in her chest. It started as a warm tingling, then grew into something more substantial. A golden thread that seemed to stretch between her and the alpha in the other room. The mate bond, she realized with wonder, was growing stronger with every passing moment they spent together. Arya woke sometime in the early hours of the morning to find moonlight streaming through the windows and the bond between her and Kyle thrumming with an energy that made her whole body feel alive. She could sense him without seeing him, could feel his emotions and his presence as if they were woven into her own thoughts. Quietly, she slipped out of bed and padded into the sitting room. Kyle had fallen asleep on the couch, still fully dressed, his book slipping from his relaxed fingers. He looked younger in sleep, the weight of the crown momentarily gone from his face. Without thinking, Arya moved closer, drawn by the mate bond that was now impossible to ignore. As she approached, Kale's eyes opened, instantly alert despite having been deeply asleep moments before. "Arya, is something wrong?" "I can feel it," she whispered, placing a hand over her heart. "The bond between us. It's so strong now, like a living thing connecting our souls." Kyle sat up slowly, his gaze locked on hers. "I feel it too. It solidified while we talked, grew stronger with each truth we shared, each moment of genuine connection." "What does this mean?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "It means the moon goddess has confirmed what my wolf recognized the moment I saw you." He rose to stand in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You're my true mate, Arya. The other half of my soul I've spent 2 centuries searching for." "But you said I was free to leave?" she reminded him, needing to understand. "That I belong to no one. And I meant it. The bond doesn't change that." His voice was rough with emotion, but steady with conviction. "If you choose to walk away tomorrow, I'll let you go. I'll give you everything I promised and never try to contact you again, even though it would destroy me. Your freedom, your right to choose, matters more than my own happiness." The selflessness of his words shattered the last of Arya's defenses. This was an alpha who valued her autonomy more than his own desires, who was willing to honor her choices even when they went against everything his wolf instincts demanded. "What if I choose to stay?" she asked softly. "Not because I'm grateful or traumatized or lacking options, but because in one night you've shown me more respect and genuine care than I've ever known. Because when I imagine tomorrow, the only future I can picture is one that includes you." Hope blazed in Kyle's eyes, quickly tempered by caution. "Arya, I need you to be absolutely certain. Accepting a mate bond, is forever. I need to know that you're choosing this because it's what you truly want, not because you feel obligated or because you think it's your only option. Ask me again tomorrow, she suggested gently, recognizing that his concerns were real. After I've slept, after I've processed everything, after I've felt what it's like to be truly free with real choices and genuine options. If I still choose you, then will you believe it's real? Yes, he agreed instantly. If you still feel this way after thinking clearly, I'll accept it. But Arya, I want you to really understand what you'd be choosing. Being my mate means becoming queen of all wolves. It means politics, pressure, expectations. Your life will never be entirely private again. Everything you do will be scrutinized and judged. I need you to know what that life looks like. I understand. She took his hand, feeling the spark of the bond flare where their skin touched. And tomorrow, I'll still choose you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. They stood there, hands intertwined, the mate bond humming warmly between them like a living heartbeat. After a long moment, Kale leaned forward and pressed a tender kiss to her forehead, guiding her gently back toward the bed. Sleep, my heart, he murmured. Tomorrow, we'll face everything together. As Arya drifted back into sleep, she felt more at peace than she had in years. The mate bond wrapped around her like a cocoon, offering a sense of belonging and safety that washed away every lingering fear. Whatever came next, she wouldn't be facing it alone. Morning arrived too quickly. Sunlight spilled through the windows, waking Arya from the deepest, most restorative sleep she'd had in months. For a moment she sat there, confused. She didn't recognize the room, the bed, the silence. But then everything flooded back. The auction, the Alpha King's intervention, the night they spent talking, and the bond that had solidified between them. She looked over to the couch and froze. Kyle wasn't there. A sharp pang of panic hit her. Had he left? Had it all been a dream? Then she spotted a note on the bedside table, written in elegant, steady handwriting. Good morning, Arya. I've gone to handle some urgent pack business, but I'll return by noon. Everything I promised you is ready. Funds, papers, transportation. You're free to leave whenever you choose. But if you decide to stay, I'll be the happiest wolf alive. Whatever you choose, meeting you has been the greatest gift I've received in 200 years of existence. Kale Arya held the note to her chest, feeling the sincerity in every word through the mate bond that continued to thrum even in his absence. He meant it. He truly meant it. A gentle knock broke her reverie, and a warm-faced woman in staff uniform entered, carrying a tray of breakfast. Good morning, miss. His Majesty requested I bring you breakfast and inform you that he's prepared several options for your consideration. Options? Arya asked, puzzled. Yes, miss. He's arranged several possibilities should you choose to start fresh somewhere. There's a teaching position at a Northern Pack school, a healing apprenticeship at one of the region's finest medical facilities, or simply funds and freedom to go wherever you wish and pursue any path you desire. The woman set the tray down and gestured toward a folder on the desk. All the details are in there. After she left, Arya opened the folder with trembling hands. Everything was exactly as described. Official offers for positions aligned with the dreams she had shared with Kale. Last night, accompanied by documentation and enough funds to live comfortably for years while deciding what she truly wanted. He had listened to her late-night confessions about her interrupted dreams, and somehow, in just a few hours, he had arranged real opportunities for her to pursue them. Even knowing that it might mean losing her, he had given her the means to build the life she had always longed for. Tears streamed down her face. This was what it meant to be truly valued, to be cared for by someone who placed her needs above his own desires. This was love in its purest form, The willingness to let go of what you wanted most for the sake of another's happiness. And in that moment, Arya knew her choice with absolute certainty. She spent the morning exploring the palace with an escort who showed her everything: the vast library where Kale spent his free time, the observatory atop the highest tower where he studied the stars, and the modest private quarters he kept separate from his official royal apartments. Each space revealed more about the man behind the crown, a person who valued knowledge, beauty, and quiet moments of peace. By noon, Kale returned as promised. Arya waited in the garden where they had agreed to meet. He approached slowly, his expression carefully neutral despite the anxiety she could feel through their bond. "You're still here," he observed, a note of cautious hope in his voice. "I'm still here," she confirmed. "Did you think I would leave?" "I didn't know. I hoped, but I refused to assume." He moved closer, stopping a respectful distance away. "Have you made your decision, Arya?" She took a deep breath, knowing her next words would shape both their lives. "I went through all the options you prepared for me. They're generous beyond anything I could have imagined. You listened to the dreams I shared and created real pathways for me to achieve them." "You deserve to chase your dreams," he said, softly. "Whatever path you pick, I need you to understand this. You're not weak, not broken, not less than anyone. You're extraordinary, Arya, and any pack would be honored to have you." "You're right," she replied. "I do deserve to follow my dreams. And now, because of what you did, I finally have real choices. For the first time ever, I'm free to choose my own direction." She could see him subtly bracing himself for the blow, his posture tightening like he was preparing for heartbreak. The sight only deepened her love for him, this strong alpha who was willing to feel pain for her. "That's exactly why I'm certain about this choice," she said, stepping closer. "I'm not choosing you because I'm cornered, or desperate, or lacking options. I'm choosing you because you're what I want. You're the dream I never knew I carried, the future I couldn't picture until last night." Hope ignited in his eyes, dimmed only by his careful restraint. "Arya, are you completely sure? There's no undoing this." "I know," she said. "And yes, I'm sure." She took his hands, the mate bond humming with happiness at the touch. "You told me I belong to no one, and you were right. I don't belong to you. But I choose you. I choose us. I choose this bond, and everything it brings. Not out of obligation, out of desire." The composure he'd been holding onto broke, and suddenly she was in his arms, held tightly as he pressed his face into her hair. "Thank you," he breathed, voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for choosing me, for looking past the crown and seeing the man beneath it, for giving me the one thing I've wanted for 2 centuries, someone to truly share my life with." "And thank you," she whispered through her tears, "for seeing me as more than an omega to be used and forgotten, for treating me like someone who matters, someone whose thoughts and feelings and choices mean something. You gave me freedom, so I can freely give you my heart." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped tightly in each other while the mate bond settled into something lasting and unbreakable. Around them, the palace gardens burst into bloom, as though the world itself understood the weight of what had just happened. "So, what happens now?" Arya asked at last, lifting her gaze to the man who was now officially her mate. "Now we prepare a proper mating ceremony, introduce you to the pack, and begin the work of leading together." Kyle looked down at her with a smile, his eyes glowing with love and certainty. "But first, I think we should escape to that mountain cabin I told you about. Just us. No duties, no pressure. Time to know each other as partners, not as a king and the Omega he rescued." "That sounds perfect," she said, already picturing the calm and closeness such a retreat would bring. Walking back toward the palace, fingers entwined, the golden shine of their completed bond surrounding them, Arya thought about how drastically her life had changed in less than a day. She had stepped into that auction hall as a purchased Omega with no hope and no direction. She was leaving as a free wolf who had chosen her own fate, who had found love and purpose in a place she never expected. The Alpha King had declared she belonged to no one, and he had been right. She didn't belong to him or to anyone else, but she had chosen to share her life with him, and that choice, made freely and fully aware of every option she had, meant more than any forced bond ever could. In the end, real freedom wasn't about standing alone. It was about having the power to choose where you wanted to stand and who you wanted to stand with. And Arya had chosen exactly where she belonged, with the man beside her. Some stories began with imprisonment and ended in freedom. Hers had begun with freedom and ended with a decision. The decision to give her heart to someone who, treasured it. To build a life with someone who recognized her worth. To create a future with someone who would always place her happiness first. It wasn't the life she had imagined. It was far better. And it all began with 3 words that changed everything. You belong to no one. The words that had given her true freedom, the freedom that allowed her to choose the greatest love she had ever known.